Hello everybody, General James Game here, and welcome to another video. Today we are taking a look at 2019's upcoming Godzilla film known as Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Before we do get into this video though, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the upcoming Godzilla vs. Kong film coming out in 2020. How do you think the events are going to take place in this film, and do you reckon it's going to be quite entertaining? I do know for a fact that there is going to be a definite winner, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on who do you reckon would win. If you wish, you may go to the description and check out a link to another video I created on a little versus review as to who would win the fight. The ideas I created in that video are based off true facts, but I also do hope that Godzilla does win the fight. Sorry to all you Kong fans. But anyway, let's get into the discussion at hand. Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Now at this very moment, there are 2 trailers in existence. Even though there is most likely going to be a third, it's still enough to get every single fan excited. What we are looking at today are the Easter eggs hidden in these trailers. Using these Easter eggs, we are going to try and create a plot. The plot, for you guys that don't know, is the series of events that happens throughout this story. The plot, from what we expect just by looking at the trailer, is going to be very simple. Godzilla is going to awaken again, and so are these other kaiju spread out throughout the earth. The kaiju shown in these trailers are going to be pretty easy to identify. The giant pterosaur that we see is known as Rodan, the giant worm and then moth-like creature, Mothra, and then the 3-headed dragon of lightning, King Ghidorah. With these kaiju in mind, we are going to create idea 1 for our plot. For idea 1, we are going to be looking at what sides we reckon these creatures are going to be on. And by sides, I mean...
which of these titans are here to protect us? And which of these titans are here to threaten us?
And since we have a lot of previous Godzilla movies that were made, we can use those to our advantage, since most of these kaiju are based off previous Japanese types. From what we can tell, Godzilla is most likely going to be on the side of good. In the second trailer, we see him running with jets at his side. This shows that we're basically helping Godzilla to take on the other kaiju. And in the final scene, we see Godzilla taking on King Ghidorah. So that identifies the alignment of these 2 creatures. With Mothra and Rodan's alignment, this is going to be a little tricky since we're making an original plot. Rodan, when we see him in the trailer, he's being intercepted by some jet fighters. This most likely puts him on the threatening side of the story. Also the fact that he took out a lot of buildings when he was flying over them. Mothra's alignment is going to be not as hard, but it's not going to be as simple either. From previous movies, Mothra has mostly been on the side of good, and in these trailers we have not really seen her be threatening towards humanity. So she'll most likely be on the side of good again. So there we have our sides, Godzilla and Mothra versus Rodan and Ghidorah. Now idea 2, and this just came to me, we could perhaps be looking at a new super kaiju. And the reason why I say that is due to these few scenes. Now looking at this first piece of footage, it shows multiple amounts of legs coming out of the ground. These legs seem to belong to a sort of insect, if you will. And throughout the Godzilla franchise, we have seen multiple types of insects. These legs we see right here, they seem to belong to Kumonga, the giant spider. Now, of course I'm not calling this a super kaiju, because, well, Kumonga was easily defeated in Final Wars. What I am saying is these pairs of legs look exactly like Kumonga's, but they may not belong to Kumonga. There is every possibility Kumonga might turn up in the story, and there's every possibility that Kumonga won't. But onto this being a super kaiju, there is one that looks exactly like this and is mentioned in the Godzilla franchise. For those that are big fans of the Godzilla franchise as well, and have seen most of their films, you probably know what I'm talking about. The kaiju in here could be Destroyer. Those of you who do not know who Destroyer is, let me inform you. Destroyer only ever appears in one film, and by coincidence, that film is called Godzilla vs. Destroyer, which came out on the 9th of December 1995. The kaiju Destroyer was originally a crustacean, but then was mutated by the effects of the Oxygen Destroyer, the weapon used to kill the first ever Godzilla. In the scene that is currently displayed, this is probably his aggregate form. In this form, Destroyer looks like this. What we see right now is most likely his legs, and he's ascending out of the ground. Do you perhaps see a resemblance between his legs and these? Okay, good. If you're following still, that means you've most likely agreed. Now, this raises question. If Destroyer is the one who is in this picture, what about this footage? To answer your question, this is Destroyer burrowing. In the 1995 film, we've seen him be able to bury through solid concrete, so we can most likely say that he is capable of burrowing. What form he is in is a different question though. This is most likely when he has matured and become his final form. In his final form, he looks like this. And the reason why I say he's in his final form and not any other form is because this. Pointed out by another YouTuber that goes by the name of Altori, she states that this object is a horn, and states that this could be an earth kaiju, such as Baragon and Angirius. However, if you have a look at Destroyer's final form, he has a horn, meaning that this kaiju we see right now could be Destroyer. Now, having a look at these other scenes I've mentioned, this is Destroyer in his final form. If we pause through this exact scene, we see a kaiju walking upright through the burning wreckage. This kaiju seems to have red ruins buried in its skin. Destroyer has a similar design to it, but do consider it this way. Throughout the years of kaiju creation, the developers have kept one thing in mind: upgrade, change, redesign the look of these creatures. This could be Destroyer in a new reboot, and if he were to be a super kaiju and the main antagonist in this story, they would have made it pretty darn clear that this monster is to look dangerous. There is one more thing to consider through these different scenes. Take a listen to the roar in some of these different scenes. Unfamiliar enough? If the developers didn't want us to confuse the kaiju between other kaiju, they would have changed the sounds at least. This kaiju seems to have a roar that's different compared to all the other kaiju. Take a listen. And now here's the new kaiju's roar. And yes, I do know Destroyer's roar is completely different to this. However, consider what I said before. Redesign, upgrade. They could have changed the sound that Destroyer makes. Of course, this is just a theory, but consider a plot twist. They could throw in an extra kaiju. And do consider it this way. Legendary and Warner Brothers have done it before. In the 2014 Godzilla, we are made to believe through the trailer that Godzilla is the antagonist. We never really see the Mutos. We only ever see little shots of them. And even if we did see the Muto, we would have mistaken it for Godzilla or something else. When the movie came out and the trailer was basically completely watched, a lot of people had their minds blown to see that an extra kaiju, and that they were wrong about Godzilla being a threat. So who knows? This could be a new kaiju. Whether it be Kumonga, Baragon, Angirius, or even Destroyer, this could be a little plot twist, and that we're mistaking this kaiju for something else. It could even be a new kaiju, one that we've never seen before. And with that little theory explained, let's move on to Idea 3. With idea 3, we're going to see how humanity relates to the whole idea of a kaiju apocalypse. Humanity is really there just to be used as like a last resort, in case the story becomes boring and they need an extra piece. Right now, we know that humanity has found the kaijus. Since Kong Skull Island and the mentioning of all these kaijus, we now know that after a few decades, humanity has officially found these kaiju. Godzilla is at the bottom of the ocean, King Ghidorah's packed in ice, and Rodan's sleeping in a volcano. Mothra, we're not really too sure of where she's hiding, but from what it seems, the government or United Nations or whoever's in control, they seem like they want to release the kaiju essentially. Monarch is probably in a disagreement. But the thought here is, why would they release the kaiju? The one way I could think it'd be a good idea to release them is because they want to try and bring the kaiju together. Doing this could have dire consequences though. The sacrifices to bring the kaiju together, and also the possibility that the kaiju could team up and take out humanity. Or the one idea I'm thinking at the moment, and this is relation to idea 2 about the new super kaiju. Maybe it's more humanity was experimenting with Godzilla genes and they mixed it with the oxygen destroyer, and Destroyer was created. This could be a possible story, unless you're throwing in a new kaiju. But either way, they need to awaken all these other kaiju and bring them to this new kaiju's location in order to defeat it. But in doing so, they lost control and the kaiju are now destroying humanity as well. So they need to rely on Godzilla in order to defeat these other kaiju. In the second trailer, they're having a meeting where they say the exact phrase,
"So you'd want to make Godzilla our pet?"
No, we would be his.
That conversation or debate or whatever it was got me thinking. They're singling out Godzilla. They wouldn't be doing this unless they would make him fight the other kaiju. So after countless attempts of trying to bring down the kaiju themselves, humanity looked towards Godzilla to take them out. This wouldn't exactly be the brightest ideas. I mean, they had better ideas in an alternate universe. So why couldn't they just simply build robots to fight kaiju? In a sense, fight fire with fire. But either way, Godzilla's going to be the hero in this story. The developers have made it quite clear in the last film that Godzilla's a savior, humanity's rightful defender, or at least Earth's. So with the idea of humanity using Godzilla, or in the sense Godzilla using humanity, let's move on to idea number 4. After having a look at one of these scenes, it's sort of made me put a little bit of doubt on the whole Godzilla being savior thing. Right now I'm going to play the scene, and you tell me what you see. What I see right there is an injured Godzilla, who looks like he's just on the brink of death. Whether if it was a bit of a tussle with King Ghidorah, it is most likely that Godzilla is going to be mortally wounded in this story. We of course know he's not going to die, because, well, they're making a second movie in 2020. At best, Godzilla's just going to pull another incident from 2014 where he gets squashed by the building, or stabbed repeatedly by the Mutos. But either way, we've seen Godzilla lose to King Ghidorah a couple times. Or not really lose, but get badly injured to the point where he needs reinforcements in order to defeat King Ghidorah. There is the possibility of Mothra actually helping Godzilla defeat King Ghidorah. Mothra in fighting we've never really seen do much, except for Godzilla vs Mothra Battle for the Earth. In other films, Mothra basically just annoyed Godzilla. This is a remake of Mothra though, so whether they're going to give it new powers, new abilities, new strengths, whatever, it's going to possibly help out in the battle. There could even be something where Godzilla fights King Ghidorah twice. The first time he loses, but he then gets some sort of power and then fights him again. We've never really seen Godzilla use the nuclear pulse ability, otherwise known as a short burst that can push back any foe. so they could use it in this film. Do keep in mind, in one of the films when Godzilla was fighting King Ghidorah, he actually used that ability, and that actually helped out a lot. But with that idea discussed of Godzilla getting help or powering up in some sense, we're going to move on to a different idea. Now this is going to be the final idea before I summarize and create a plot. This was actually suggested by another YouTuber named Tommy H. At a guess to how the film ends, it's most likely going to be Godzilla stumbles upon Skull Island after the battle. Do keep in mind, when it gets to 2020, they're still using the same Godzilla for the battle against Kong, but the way the two kaiju are going to meet, well, that's always been quite vague. But what if Godzilla actually didn't win the fight against King Ghidorah? Now before you say I'm crazy, do keep in mind, in the scene I pointed out before, Godzilla was barely alive. So if you take into consideration that Godzilla barely survived, but somehow managed to get away from the hassle, what if he swam away and managed to get to Skull Island? By the time he gets there, he's already fully recovered and is about to go back and take care of King Ghidorah and the rest. But instead, he has to fight against Kong, who's now defending his territory after the intrusion of this massive dinosaur. Remember how Kong fought the skull crawlers in Kong Skull Island? Well, Godzilla sort of looks similar to one of those. Kong could think that there's still some that are left alive and he needs to finish them off, but instead takes on the wrong monster, which ends up being Godzilla. Their first battle could be on Skull Island, and then one of the two retreats and they get to the mainland, and there they have to either avoid the other monsters or just meet up again eventually. Now with the idea to Godzilla King of the Monsters and its ending discussed, let's move on to summarizing these ideas now. Now idea number one was talking about the alignments of these creatures, whether if they fall into the category of defending humanity or planning to threaten humanity. Idea number two, explaining the possibility of a new super kaiju that all these other kaiju have to take on. Idea number three, talking about humanity's relevance to the story. Idea number four, explaining probably a major event that might take place after the fight. And idea five, explaining the ending to what might possibly be our original plot. So with these ideas summarized, let's go on and create a plot. In our first chapter, we see humanity looking at all these different types of kaiju that they have discovered and are debating what to do with them. After a bit of consideration and debating, they come to a conclusion to destroy the kaiju, but not by themselves, by using other kaiju to kill the other kaiju. They set explosive devices or other means of getting kaiju out of their hiding spots, awaken them, but ultimately bring about the disasters that follow. Kaiju are too hard to control and move to other places. Many lives are lost. Monarch then steps in with the idea to use Godzilla as their last resort. With humanity's help, Godzilla is able to defeat these other creatures, and also possibly with the help of Mothra, but is wounded in the event of doing so. Godzilla then returns to the shore and, like in the original movie, disappears. Later on, we see a little bonus scene of him walking up to Skull Island, and then we perhaps see Kong in the distance thinking, oh, that's a new intruder, we better go take care of him. If you were to include the new kaiju in all this, it'd basically be more like humanity created this new monster, or they awoke it, or it woke up on its own accord, and now is terrorizing the people of Earth. To stop this new kaiju, people pull their resources together to awaken the other kaijus and hope that they can be able to stop this new one. They ultimately succeed, but then they end up fighting each other, and Godzilla is badly wounded in the process, and then retreats to Skull Island. So there we have it, people. An original plot based on evidence and the trailers themselves. If you all like this video and you want to see more, click that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, and also leave a comment down below suggesting your thoughts on the upcoming Kong vs Godzilla film. This has been General James Game bringing you another video, and for the time, recruits, you are dismissed. Take care.